How many turns does she do? Okay, I'm counting.
Too many.
All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Criminy. Hello and welcome to another zany episode of Nerdy West Coast Swing, the podcast with pixels where the anchors are out of this world and the points don't matter. We are here to help train your eyes so you can learn faster and dance better. I'm Cassie Winter.
I'm Alicia Marshall, and I totally just forgot my intro because we haven't done this in a long time.
I know. It's been a month since we did this live.
Pretend I said my intro and we can move on.
Sounds good. We are going to be hosting the Breakfast with Champions at Swingcouver New Year's Day. And one of the sections of the Breakfast of Champions is going to be curated questions from all of you, our amazing nerdy nerds. I don't know. Do we have nouns for you? Our nerds. So please share in the comments below questions you want us to ask the amazing panel of champions we're going to have with us.
We should also probably mention, I believe Sarah said she wants to live stream it. So if you do ask us, you should be able to hear the answer for it.
Yeah. Tonight, we are analyzing the first place classic routine from the first US Open in 3 years. Ben Morris and Cameo McHenry. And oh my God, this pairing was such an absolute surprise and delight and such a fantastic routine. Yeah, without any further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and drop that link in the chat. Go ahead and give it a watch. And when you're done, get to analyzing. Yeah, God, such a good routine. And Aaron said, we were screaming at the cameraman to zoom out during the watch party. I don't know what was up with the cameraman for Global Dance at the US Open, but everything that I watched live, there were way too many times where even in routine divisions, the entire partnership would go out of frame for a good 5 to 8 counts before the cameraman was like, oh, I should move the camera. What was going on? It was terrible. Before we dive into the screen share tonight, there are just a few things that I want to point out that just makes this such a fantastic routine. First of all, music choice and the way they structure those music choices. So basically this routine has 3 acts to it. And we have previously done an episode where I think we compared storytelling structure, which was my expertise, with music theory, which is Alicia's expertise. And basically 3 act structure, beginning, middle, and an end. And that's what's going on with the music. And it's all different versions of the same song. Hit the road, Jack.
Yep.
And I just love that because not only is it amazing structurally to create a piece of art that has a beginning, middle, and an end, but it gives them a break in the middle from so much work.
Yep. For sure. Especially for Cameo.
And then the other thing I just want to highlight, because I know I've known Ben for over 10 years now, and he is just on fire. I haven't seen him that lit up performing in a really long time, and it just made my heart soar. I was like, you do this, Ben, you got this. It was amazing. And you can just tell he's having the time of his life throughout the whole routine. And same with Cameo. I just I know, just Ben was love you, Ben. Anyways, that was my just little preamble. Do you have anything you want to share?
Yeah, I want to add just a little bit to it. Because I know I've harped on when we've talked about routines before, just how all the pieces of it have to come together to make a routine really special. And I think this is absolutely one of them. It's interesting because, they've had their own separate partnerships, but personality wise, they match so well for this type of just fun, performance heavy routine. And, I think that with Victoria and Ben previously, Ben McHenry, they were experimenting with other things, which is totally fine because it was, a longer partnership. But I think this just totally fits them. It was great choreography. It really showcased Cameo, her ability to, just do so many things that most dancers can't do because she has so much training. So I just thought, fantastic choice, fantastic partnership. Not to say anything bad about their previous partnerships. Enjoyed those too, but like this, I think, like you were saying, is just like for both of them, it was just like really, like you could tell that they were really enjoying themselves.
Yeah. There's something really special about this partnership. Yeah. So without any further ado, to the screen share. There are just so many like vaudeville elements to this opening sequence. And I absolutely love the way they transition to a connection together because it's so seamless, but the way they're doing it is so hard.
Yeah.
Because they're both moving screen right. And they're acting as if they're tethered. Like Cameo is pretending as if she's tethered to a connection through this final rotation right here, but she's not. And then the transition into like the one after that, just so seamless.
Yeah, that has a lot to do with spacing. Spacing is really important when you do routines. Routines is just a tiny bit more important in terms of your spacing to your partner.
Right, because you're trying to do very specific things together. Because like if the connection fails for any reason, if both partners know where they're supposed to be when, you can usually get through it.
Yeah. I love this. I love that they're starting to build a little bit because we started really far back and then we're bringing it up more towards the audience, but it's not like they're doing it in a very creative manner. I love that they are having Cameo do more rotations while they're coming forward. It's just there's more dimensions to it.
Even from the very beginning, as soon as they started doing their kind of synchronous steps together, the pulse to their movement is so strong and clear. And that pulse is like so hard to find these days. And granted, this kind of music really lends itself to it, so it would be that much more jarring if they weren't doing it. But both of them are showing that pulse so well. And even in these turns right here with Cameo, the way she is spotting the audience and also pulsing kind of the fan of her arms. So we get to see her a little bit longer through here, and then she speeds up, and then a little bit longer through here. And that's the pulsing.
And another thing, I feel like I talked about this in one of our more recent episodes, but really being able to show the connection is something that's really important for routines, especially.
Yeah, that was our last episode because we talked about a couple of routines in your favorites list.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Time is just in general confusing over the holiday season, so I don't blame you for being confused.
Said this recently. I don't know when. But yeah, so it's extremely important for routines, and not all couples do that when you watch them. You have to really exaggerate what you're doing with the connection in order to really make it look like there's connection. And so, like for Cameo, with the like rotations forward, you can see she's kind of leaning back into it, right? She's not just ghosting it and like turning herself.
Yeah, so you can tell there's a really great connection for the prep right here. And then as she's grounding into her right foot, she's really sinking into that connection in his right hand. And I also want to highlight just his snapping as he's going. Like, it's fantastic because this is a moment where choreography wise, it could be really easy to just let all of the focus be on the follow, right? But he's also having a bit of a moment here, and it's fantastic.
Yeah. I also want to mention, though, that even though in this particular moment, it really looks like she is using him for connection to move her forward, it's not. It's more of an illusion, but that is one of those things, like, you really have to be able to show that there's connection there. And so her really leaning back into it and the specific way that she's going about it, it makes it look like there's probably a lot more connection than there is.
Right. Yeah, if there were more connection because she has a bare midriff, her skin would be gripping against his skin.
Yeah.
And just, well, talking about that, like, their costumes, fantastic. So great.
I love them. I think one thing that I really love about this routine is a lot of it doesn't feel extremely rehearsed and like really precise. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like they're just dancing through it.
Yeah, it does have that organic, like, this could have been just like the best social dance ever. While still clearly being a routine.
Yeah. And in my opinion, the way that I kind of see that is, especially when they come out of those, the free turns that they both are doing, you know, when they're stomping, it's like they're throwing their hands up. It's not like you're placing them there. That to me is a difference. And a lot of times, especially with, you know, people that are newer to routines, it's about, okay, my hands go here now.
Right.
That's all you see. Like, you're not actually getting into it, doing it.
Yeah.
And that's something that makes this routine extremely engaging. Because it feels like they're just having a fun time and just kind of like, hey, let's throw this together.
Right. I want to add, because you were talking about the hands getting thrown up. So one of the things I've seen a few situations in like advanced or all-star spotlights over the past year where there's been like a swung rhythm song, and one or both of the partners is trying to add a little Lindy flair to it. And they're trying to add that kind of like bounce pulse, but the emphasis is on the wrong part and they're emphasizing the up instead of the down.
Yeah.
And with Lindy Hop, it's really important that the emphasis is on the down in that bounce. And so as we go forward right here, you could really see really clearly how important that down is. And even right here. So this is another, oh my God, that freeze frame of Ben's face. It's fantastic. Okay.
Oh, so good.
Also, just shout out to Cameo's neck muscles for that right there, because that looks exhausting. And then the way they so distinctly transition speed right here, and they slow down and that clarity, but while still having that pulse.
Yep.
Fantastic. And then I love that section. So we've now had kind of 3 different moments of kind of that sidestepping with a pulse and like an arm action. We had one right at the very beginning, and then we had her like rotating in his arm, and we do it again here. So they're like, the choreography is structured to call back to similar moments that happened before, which creates a really amazing cohesion throughout the whole routine. Oh, so much just happened. Okay.
You went past a huge section.
I did. Well, it's like, it's hard for me to like meter the speed of the finger holding the arrow while talking. So I was just holding forward and watching, and my eyes were getting bigger. I'm like, wow, I'm gonna have to go back.
So one thing that I like about this choreography moment here. So when we started in the back left corner, and then we came up diagonal to our right. And now we're going diagonal back to our left, right? It makes it so interesting to look at when you're moving that much on the floor. Like, could they do these movements with less? Overall, probably. But because of how much they're really traveling this, it just, there's so much more interest to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so much more work for the cameraman.
True story. Yeah, because one of the things that actually really bothers me about how a lot of dancing gets filmed is that part of what can be really impactful is just how much distance a dancer or a pair of dancers is covering in a short period of time.
Yeah.
And if the camera is panning or tracking with them, that actually takes away the contrast of the dancers against a static background, because the background is no longer static. We're moving at that speed with them, and it takes away from it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I agree with what Erin said earlier, is like, zoom out. And I'm like, I agree, for certain parts of this routine, that would be really fantastic. Because they're like, especially Cameo is like booking it to start. And then the amount of air that Ben gets on his skip is quite impressive. Wee.
Such an interesting way to gain that momentum.
Mm-hmm. I'm so happy. They're both beaming.
So I love this.
So creative. I love it so much.
I think that sometimes leads, like, you get kind of lost in the making sure that you're letting your follow perform and have the spotlight. But like, this is such a fun moment because it highlights him, but like, she's also involved in it.
Yep.
I feel like so many times when leads go to highlight something that they're doing, follows are just like there.
Yeah, it's almost like a breakaway in a sense. He spends so much time just on his left foot. Feel the burn.
I will say that he made that a lot easier on himself by having two hands in contact with something.
Yeah, because his left hand's probably touching the floor, even though we can't quite see it.
It for sure is.
Yeah.
It's like one of those finger touches.
And then it's so, this part right here is just so creative for her to kind of like lunge forward and bring him back. And then also to help him come back up again. So even though he's kind of leading with his hips to come back up, her straightening her left leg is helping get his shoulder line up.
It's kind of like that final extra momentum needed. Also, Erin said I can feel my kneecap popping up.
Same. Do not attempt this routine if you are broken.
One thing that I really like about what Cameo does with her dancing is she has a really nice combination of relaxed but polished movement. She knows when to switch and when to finish a line. And like, so when she was kicking over his head, that's something that, you know, you need to have a nice finished foot.
Yeah, look at that foot. Perfect.
Yep. And that's something that's like totally not relaxed.
Yeah.
Then she goes back into this where, you know, it's more of that relaxed, fun movement.
Mm-hmm. I love that pose she strikes. So fantastic.
I know. It's funny, the first time that I watched it, I heard that like little hit coming and I was like, hope they do something with that.
Mm-hmm.
And she hit it and I was like, yes, that was perfect. That was exactly what I wanted.
Yep. Oh, hypermobile elbows. Shout out Cameo.
Yeah.
They're with you.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount, oh, you can just camera flash. That's why
Mm-hmm.
performers don't like flash, because that is sudden and a lot. Anyways, I totally agree with how excited Ben is. I am also this excited at this moment in time. This little eyebrow raise right there. Pop. So great.
I think what's fun about this routine is that it doesn't even necessarily feel like they're characters, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that's kind of the vibe they were going for, is like that really over the top, like really character driven routine, but it doesn't even feel like that, you know?
Right. It just
At least
feels
in my
like
opinion.
them being themselves and enjoying themselves.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about that slow sequence.
Yeah.
So this is really hard.
Yup. She's
Props
basically
to
doing
Cameo.
fouettes, but without getting to have any contra body whatsoever. And also doing neck rolls. Like,
Yeah, so what's interesting about this, so when you go into like 1 foot turns and stuff like that, you really like where your head and neck are is extremely important because it will throw off your balance,
mhm.
but it also makes it really hard to like spot anything, that type of thing. So it really throws you off. Like you really you don't totally feel where you're at in space.
Mhm.
It's a terrible feeling, but they really balance that out with the shape that she's making. So having the head down, but then she's also having the leg come up to her, it's kind of helping. She's a little bit more condensed rather than like spread out and trying
Mhm.
to do different shapes with the head and neck. That feels more out of control generally. But she's doing a fantastic job of this. And the key thing, in my opinion, to this is that Ben is using like a wrist stir. It's
Mhm.
not like a normal hand, like fingers, you know?
Yeah. And there are several things I want to highlight about what Ben is doing. And the first is the way he is standing, because Cameo is tall enough that he can't just relaxedly get over her head for 1 foot spins. So
Gotta make a little effort.
yeah, so what he is doing is he's really stretching his right side. So his right shoulder is as high as possible relative to his
Mhm.
stance, and then extending from the arm to create the last bit of distance. A lot of leaders that are trying to like clear a head are doing it all from the arm,
Mhm.
and it really needs to be from the torso. So you can see, if I hold forward again, just how much higher his right shoulder is from his left.
Yeah.
And he's not dropping his left shoulder, he's raising his right one
Mhm.
to create that space. And then, like Alicia was saying, he's doing a stirring motion with his wrist
In her
instead of
elbow.
using fingers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's doing like a full orbit around her. and trying to keep that orbit as level as possible. So his hand is getting close to him and then far away from him, then close to him and then far away from him, in this big stirring the pot motion.
Yeah.
And he's also being really attentive with his left hand for when to catch and add that little bit of support on her left arm and releasing it as soon as she needs it released. So he's not interfering with her momentum. It's just a little bit of stabilization for her.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's when she is kicking out the foot. And so that's when she is becoming more off balance with the shape that she's in. And so it's not completely on her, and it's not particularly like not stable, like just having that extra, because the wrist stir is very solid. Like if you've ever had that type of lead, it's a very comfortable feeling. And then adding that extra, like where she can kind of lean into him a little bit as she kicks it, that's what really makes this work.
Yeah, because usually in like a standard fouette, what happens is, A, you're upright.
She does. She goes into the next.
Oh, right. Oh yeah, thank you. Wait for it. Seriously, her neck muscles deserve an Oscar for this routine. But yeah, so like right here, what happens in a fouette is usually the shoulder opposite the leg is delayed a little bit, so you're getting this lovely moment of like a pose, but you're getting a nice stretch, resisted release diagonally across the front of your torso that you then release in order to get your next rotation going. And with all of the shenanigans of the neck rolls, that can't necessarily happen in her torso in a normal way for a fouette. So that's why his extra handhold is helping, the way Alicia was describing just now.
Yeah.
How many turns does she do? Okay, I'm counting.
Too many.
All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Criminy. No thanks. I'm good.
So, I want to add, for follows that are just learning how to do these like 1 foot things socially, and you're kind of wanting to play around with adding more of the fouette, Cameo and Chantel. Watch them.
Yeah.
They are ballerinas. They know how to do it.
Yep.
So, not saying that other people don't, but they have been trained to do it like technically perfect.
Yeah.
Also, I love the drag coming out of this. It's so funny to me though that she reaches for his neck and she like smacks him in the face.
I know, it's like so close.
You're like, where am I?
You know. Hello, Ben. How you doing? Hello.
So close. We almost made it.
It's so great. And like the main thing that's happening is she has so much momentum going into it, and her right side is rotating like clockwise. And he's just physically not close enough. Like you can tell by the way his arm is that way. The only connection is like with his hand and wrist. If his forearm were across her back too, like if he were just that much closer, I think she'd be able to gauge a lot better where he was. Yeah. But with just like the hand and wrist under her armpit, she's like, where'd you go? Come back, please.
With coming out of the turns and then also just trying to figure out where your partner is at. It's just a lot.
Yeah.
So I feel like probably anyone would have done that. Not making fun of Cameo. It's more like, I feel you.
I feel like this could have been a moment for a face loop. Like Ben could have gone for the hand across his own body and like guided it there as an option. I don't know. I'm not presuming to offer them options because they know what they want to do there. But this is like where the spacing was just a little bit off, and that's why the shenanigans happened.
Yep. That's why, like at the beginning, I was saying that spacing is so important for routines specifically, because you have to go into something very specific next. Whereas with dancing socially, like, yeah, spacing is important for you to do certain things, but because it's a social dance and it's improv, like you don't have to do something next if you don't quite get the right spacing for it. You can change it into something else.
Yeah.
Routines are not that way.
Yeah.
So it's something that is probably talked about more than you would think if you've never done routines.
All right. So we are now at about the 1/3 mark for this routine, maybe a little bit past it. And this is where
the next song.
This is where they switch into the next song, which is the slower version. And I love how they have this really clear like ending moment to this first act.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Nice and sharp, crisp. I like it.
Because it offers just so much contrast between what came before and what is now going to come after, which is slow and kind of moody, but is still the same song, just a different version of it. Show's done well, make me so happy.
All right.
So
start is so nice.
One of the things that happens socially a lot, because like part of the O show is to do like a delayed weight transfer. So her foot is out ahead of her body. But for her to then rotate on that foot, the torso needs to get over it. And a lot of leaders just leave the hand over here. And you're like, I can't, I wanna, but you're not letting me. Just let me, Ocho, please.
This is one of the moments that I was talking about earlier where they really show the connection, because you can see Ben has his hand on her as she initially rotates towards the audience, and then it expands away from him as she moves away. And that's something that like it shows, as because you can also see him then moving. It shows that connection.
Yeah, her fingers are just so purposeful and fantastic. And then the way he's beaming when he looks at her out of this, it's like we're doing this. Yes, we are. Fantastic. But yeah, it's like a physics cause and effect. So her finishing her weight transfer onto her right foot is affecting him. And like, that's one of those things that once you have a trained eye, like hopefully a lot of you nerds out there are starting to have, you'll notice when the cause and effect order is incorrect. And you're like, wait, person B did something that should have only happened after person A did a thing, but it happened in the opposite order. And that hurts my brain. It should hurt your brain.
Yeah. I love that they're able to completely fill out the whole movement that they're going through, because we're now like slowing it down, like very like it's a big difference. And so because they're moving relatively fast for the beginning part, they need to make sure that when they're then going through the slower piece, that they're not losing anything from it, that there's no like stalling moments from them, like hitting the end of their movement too fast. And they do a fantastic job at it.
Yeah. And there's something like, yes, it's a break for them because they've just been doing so much at high speeds, but like, I bet everybody here knows, like, if you just danced a fast song and now there's a super slow song, your nervous system has a hard time calming down. So while it's on one part a relief, it is counterintuitively often more work to slow down that much right after going so fast, to be able to time your movements so that way they're taking up all of the time they need instead of being truncated and offset a little bit. There's something about these side clip together side that it just is so fantastic. Because like it's just a little bit something, it's almost like they have a secret. Performance wise, it's like they have a secret. We don't know what it is. It has that vibe to it, and it's a little bit different than what we've had so far in the routine.
Yeah. Well, I think that up to this point, they've both addressed the audience, but not at the same time together.
Yeah, good observation. I think you are totally correct.
And that's something that always makes a dramatic change, is when, you know, you're interacting with the audience. You don't want to not be looking at the audience when you're going through routines, or if you're doing spotlights or competing or whatever. But there's a moment where you then at the same time address the audience and be like, hey, are you watching? This is cool. Keep watching.
Yeah.
And it's a more it's just interesting. It kind of brings the audience into it a little bit more for a hot second.
Yeah. Okay, I want to talk about Ben giving himself whiplash. Because you know that's what happened. Because the way he reacts after, I'm like, oh, I know that feeling. It's like a twang up through your spine, really uncomfortable. But the way right here, he hits this so hard, like the motion blur on these frames is bonkers right through here because he's going so fast. And then he hits it, and then he's like, whoa.
Love the commitment though.
I know, yes, but I'm like, oh, that looks like it hurt. What?
His face is just like, ooh.
Yep. It's fantastic because I don't think it was choreographed for him to hit it quite that hard. So he surprised himself a little bit. I think that's what was going on, but he still just keeps rolling with it and having a great time.
Yeah.
And then Cameo's just like kind of sigh, smile, just around this corner. Just so fantastic. Oh, I love it so much.
This is such a nice like tether, and then we're going into some shapes. But I love that they then create like similar shaping, but like differently. So he then leans over and her leg comes up and becomes kind of X.
Yeah, and that's like a callback to that moment earlier where he's like sitting back into her calf while her back is to us and he's kicking. So it's another callback, but a much more subtle one that you may not catch. It's like, oh yeah, they did kind of the opposite earlier.
Yeah. Can you go into just like that first right here? Yeah. So I just want to point out that Cameo is actually like falling into this, but it's intentional because spacing wise, right, she has to then roll out onto his back. So she has to fall because her foot isn't moving, right? So you can see she's starting to have that diagonal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a moment that you really have to be solid on, and make sure timing is correct and that you trust your partner, because not that this would go as horribly wrong as some other things.
Right.
Probably wouldn't go great if it went a little differently. So
Yeah. And I want to highlight how they're really connecting with her left side, his right, really early.
Yep.
So that way she feels stable through that falling. And then I also want to highlight that in 3-dimensional space, Ben's elbows are way behind his own back. So that way her elbows are just out to her side. Her shoulders are not compromised at all in this position. He's the one that's in an extreme position right now.
Yeah. I love that. I love that they speed it up for a little bit with that back and forth roll.
And then these swivels are just so
so nice.
Fantastic.
And you can really see that they're, because we're still at the slower part of the song, right? So they really have to fill out that time. You can't just hit.
Right.
So you can see that they're really dropping into the knees and just like really exaggerating that rotation. They're like timing the rotation so that they're not too far ahead.
Mm-hmm. God, the way she just teleports herself to the correct spacing, like they're so far apart. And then she takes this step right here. And one more step, and she's just there. So I'll just hold forward so you can see it all in context of timing.
He helps a little bit.
Yeah.
By stepping towards her slightly.
But it's very slight.
Yeah.
It's like half a footstep.
Yeah. This is really well done.
So, yeah, this sequence is bonkers. It is fantastic.
I love the choice to have the flexed feet.
Yep.
It's such a fun little addition, because this routine is so fun and, like spunky feeling.
Yeah.
Like having this slow piece of music in the middle, they are kind of doing things here and there to bring that fun back into it in a little bit. And I think that this is that, it's bringing that fun back into it, because typically you wouldn't want to break those lines. You would want the ankles to be flexed, toes pointed, but I like it. It's fun.
Yeah. Every pointed versus flexed choice that Cameo has is so purposeful throughout this whole routine. That is so great.
This is like also almost all her.
Yeah. So not only is he really selling it with his hands and arms clearly, but I love that he's like buffing out his cheeks a little bit and making a face. Just adds that last 2 cents.
Yeah.
Criminy.
Yeah.
An Academy Award for Cameo's spine.
Well, it's interesting because the way she does it, it's kind of like coming up out of a back bend, or like gymnasts or whatever. It's one of those things where once you have your feet in a certain place and your hips are pretty close over them, then you can stand up on your own from it. But she she's like hanging off him in order to kick the feet out, pull them back in where she needs them to place where she feels it's correct for her to be able to be stable and pull herself up.
Mm-hmm.
And he helps slightly by standing.
Yeah, going from this
But,
plied position
no,
to standing.
not that much.
Not that much. No.
It just gives her a little extra leeway for the face.
Yeah.
And it also, she is using him a little bit as she's coming up, but it's really not noticeable because it's on the arm that's away from the audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she has it attached still as she's coming up. So she can push. And then she rotates the arm back to where it should be.
Yeah. And then she doesn't leave that position. Like it becomes part of her line here.
Yep.
Instead of abandoning it right away.
Right. Which is why you don't really notice it.
Yeah.
You just think that she's going into that line.
Yeah.
But she's using it. It's useful.
Yep. Oh, she's
This is a fun little pretzel.
Yep.
She sets herself up for it because she comes in really close to him. And that gives her the ability to drop down on the heel. And he is already rather close to her, but because she's on the heel, she has enough flexibility and enough space. So.
And I love the way that I forget what these flicks are called, but it's such a sneaky way to transition into the hook over.
Mm-hmm.
Because this kind of hook over the arm thing with the leg is a trick that you see in some way, shape, or form at every US Open, right? This was such a nice way to get into it. You almost like miss it because it's so seamless. And then you're like, wait, when did that happen? And then he's doing such an amazing job. Once again, like watch how much he is stretching his left side. So he's lifting his left shoulder because he needs to be able to create an even bigger stir to the pot because now he's attached to her hand, which is attached to her leg. So the radius is longer than it was previously in those other 1-foot turns. And he's doing an amazing job of stirring the pot perfectly around her center axis that she's balanced on.
Yeah. And that's the goal with this, is to keep her on the 1 foot.
Yup.
In my opinion, that's probably his only concern.
Yeah, pretty much. Because like, I don't know about you, but like no matter how much strength you can get to maintain these kind of positions, there is a point at which a Charlie horse becomes inevitable. Right. And for her to also have the responsibility of like micromanaging her balance right there would be just cruel and unusual. So he's just doing a fantastic job of making it easier for her.
I like that they go into those just small, clean 1 foots.
Mm-hmm. And it in part is necessary because the radius is so much larger here. Yeah. Like Ben can only handle 1 rotation, and you notice he's having to actually physically step through space to be able to manage that. He would have to keep doing that and stepping around her massively in order to maintain that center for her. So they couldn't maintain it for very long. And so
also it looks really uncomfortable for her arm that's hooked around her leg.
Yes. Can confirm.
It's like out and around. No, thank you.
Like when I saw this live on Global Dance, like Ben McHenry's stomp of joy afterwards when he gets to hug them both, I was like, that that gets a place in the classic raw score. I jokingly place it. I'm like, that was a fantastic song. But I'm kind of with it now. I'm not someone who stomps that hard when I'm excited, but watching this frame by frame, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm there with you, sir. Yeah. I am there with you. And this section right here. So we have just had a section that was like pretty smooth.
Yeah.
And now they're transitioning into harder hits. Yep. That is the transition to the next song.
Yeah. I think it's initially when they hit out and point.
And the way they both hit this, like it's not a hip hop dance at all, but they're both really striking that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fantastic. It's interesting because like knowing when to hit something really hard versus not is a really important skill.
Mm-hmm.
So that knee gancho right there. Yep. This is another example of like spacing is important.
Yep.
So that's an easy way to kill yourself or your partner if you're spacing correctly. Mm-hmm. And I love how it's not just their legs. It's their whole bodies. And part of that is that's just correct technique, especially if you're familiar with Argentine tango at all. While this is not necessarily a gancho you would see in Argentine tango because they're in a very funky position together, but it comes from the whole body. And the other thing is the leg doesn't bend until the thigh has connected. It's another really important cause and effect. Like if the leg were to bend before the thighs connect, that's the physics isn't correct because the leg should be bending as a result of the thighs not being able to go any farther.
Right.
All right, and we are back to full speed. So even though the song had changed, they were using kind of like the very beginning of this new version of the same song to kind of ramp up into Act 3.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the point where like, okay, it's all out again.
I love that we're just getting character in between, like really recognizable stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I love the drama of it though.
Mm-hmm. When you think they're done, they're not done. Okay, they're finally done. Okay, here we go. This is the moment. Ben recently shared a reel on his social media of them running this like a week or two before the open. And apparently the jump afterwards was not originally part of the choreography. And they had finally like gotten it to a point where this sequence felt so good that Ben just naturally jumped out the other end. And he was so excited. He's like, wow, that just happened. He gives the most amazing, lighthearted yet evil cackle afterwards. Highly recommend going and checking it out. Anyways, this is what we're talking about. This shenanigans right here. Woo!
Yeah. Very fun.
Yeah, just go into the somersaults from splits and make it look easy.
It's interesting because at speed, it looks like they're going into it like totally connected, but they're not. It's an illusion. Because he's initially holding on to her as she goes into this. So she has the one hand, but then right about here, we get the release, and then he's coming and using both of his hands on his own, and she is free to finish this with both of her hands.
Mm-hmm. This is
which is the more important part.
Framing through. And then she's having to really meter when she's coming up, so her jump matches his.
Yeah. Also, he jumped so much higher than she did.
Yeah, the way he's getting to do his somersault, it has a
So much
lot
more
more
momentum.
it has a lot more momentum on the front half. So he has a lot more momentum coming out of it.
Hmm.
But
But I like it though.
it's so fantastic.
I kind of like that they're not at the same height.
Yeah. But you can see right here, her butt is already off the ground
Yeah.
and she's being very slow. And she's like sending her butt backwards and hinging forward at the hips. And then when his head is almost at her height, that's when she lets herself rise up to match him. Like it's just that little detail to be in sync that she's managing is amazing.
Hmm. It'd be interesting to know if she was doing it based off of what he was doing or based off of what the music is doing.
Mm. Once we've stopped with the screen share, I'll go see if I can find that reel of Ben's. He looks like he has received godly powers at this point. And he proceeds to dance like as if that's true for the rest of the routine. It's like he suddenly was instantaneously injected with like 4 Red Bulls. That's the amount of enthusiasm he finishes the routine with. And like she does too, but there's just something a little extra about Ben, and I love it so
much. Putting that extra work in at the end. Also, Aaron said he has ascended beyond us mere mortals.
Literally and figuratively. Uh-huh. And if I remember correctly, that's like that was the big piece to like really ramp up the end of the routine. So it's kind of like they're home free at this point and they can just ride the wave. Yeah. And that's part of the performance is now them being like, oh, we're home free. We're home free.
Although I'm willing to bet that Cameo does not feel like, all right, let's just ride the wave.
That's fair. That's fair. I think Ben has just entered some sort of Westy fugue state where it's coming through him at that point. I love that callback. So for people who don't remember, back when Ben was partnering with Jen DeLuca, do you remember the name of the song for that routine? It's like on the tip of my tongue. But there's a moment where she brushes back and forth on the toes of her shoes.
Yeah.
And it's just such a beautiful callback to that partnership, because that was one of my other absolute favorite Ben Morris routines, was that one with Jen DeLuca. Yeah. Oh wait, why am I going backwards? Okay, let's go forward. I was holding the wrong button down. And oh God, he looks like a vampire in this moment.
That's great. So
breathe.
You know what's funny is that the reason that I'm like, I'm willing to bet the Cameo is not feeling like, let's just ride the wave. Because when they come out of this jump, they're doing the same thing, but like the way she's going through this stuff, it's clean, but she could do it so much more. Because you can see, like, timing wise, Ben is doing it correctly, timing wise, with a lot more, but because Cameo's been doing all the more this whole time,
yeah,
she's like, you can do all the more right now.
Like,
I'll be here.
That's good.
Yeah, like that in particular looked rather small to me in terms of like what I'm sure she could do, what she has been doing. But you know what? I feel like it doesn't matter how long you've been doing routines, how long you've been doing the routine that you're doing. For follows, at least towards the end, you run out of steam just a little.
Yeah.
And that's when you really like have to push through it. That's the hard part of routines.
Such a great ending.
Mm-hmm.
Because like we're pretty used to seeing like knee slides into some sort of landing partial floor pose, but the way they get into this in the final shape for her is just so unique. It's fantastic. But now I can't unsee Vampire Ben.
Vampire Ben. He's wearing a lot of black, so checks out, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I think overall it's just great routine, and it's not just that it's a great routine, they do a really good job executing it. It's interesting, there's like a loose funness to it, but there's a lot of moments where they have to be super precise because of how they're doing things, what they're doing, but it doesn't feel like that the whole time. And that's something that I feel like is what should be winning classic. That where it's like you're precise, but it still feels really organic overall. That's what should be winning classic. Yeah. We're planning on going over the showcase first place. And other than that, another reminder that we will be doing the Breakfast of Champions. Please send us questions. You will hear the answers to them. Yes. Promise.
Yes. Yes. So. And please specify if you want us to name you or if you'd rather remain anonymous. If you feel like awkward about asking a question, feel free to just say anonymous, and we'll say from anonymous. Or you can hear us try to pronounce your usernames.
So that would go over really well.
Oh, I'm gonna embarrass myself.
It'll be a great time.
It'll be fantastic. We're gonna be exhausted because it's gonna be New Year's Day. And apparently the party the night before, Sarah has told us some things which we cannot share. We haven't signed an NDA, but we've signed an emotional NDA of the assumed.
It'll be fun.
It's gonna be fantastic, y'all. If you don't have your Swingcouver tickets already, go get them. Join us.
So weird to me that it's on New Year's this year. I know. Like Swingcouver for me is always like Canada trip.
I know, but now it's just across the Columbia. It's just like right there, and I'm excited.
Another Portland event.
Yeah, it's called a gala for New Year's Eve, so I'm assuming it's kind of like red carpet, be fancy, which is easier to do if you're mask presenting, because then you're just like in a really nice evening suit. But then for us female presenting who want to be like really pretty dress and heels, and then someone's like, you want to dance, and we're like,
yes, but no.
It makes me think
of that one video of Jess and Lindo where she's in these like sky high heels, right? And in this like really pretty tight dress. She manages it, but like that does not look like fun.
The number of follows that I saw in like glorious like evening gown attire and stilettos at Boogie for the red carpet night, and they were also dancing. I'm just like, well, that's not me. No,
my ankles are too not stable for that. So,
oh man, I'm tall enough already. Could you imagine me in like stilettos just wandering around? I'd be like
tower over literally everyone.
It'd be like the female Jim Minty. I already loom. I'd be soaring above everyone. Anyways, we are just rambling at this point. Thank you all so much for joining us. We will be back in 2 weeks talking about Showcase.
Yeah.
And then Breakfast with Champions, which also happens to be our 100th episode. It was meant to be. Good night. It has been a while since I've done that. Right. Do I remember all the buttons to press? Let's find out. Share screen. Optimize for video clip. Do not share sound. App. Share. Oh, and then bring your face back so I'm not alone. And also the chat in case shenanigans happened. So I don't miss it. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Can you sense Benmo talking to Roro?
Yes.
Because you know that's exactly what was happening. Right. Sorry, it's time for me to have a terrible joke. Do you think Ben and Connor shared hair raking tips? There's nothing wrong with it. I just make terrible jokes. That is me. Oh no, my brain did another terrible thing. Because, you know, like McHenry in Cameo was Bamio, and Ben Morris in Cameo is Ben Momio. You know what you can say Momio to? Momio. Whoa. All right, I'm starting it now for the next year while they're doing this routine together at events. The crowd chants, Momio. Be more excited than I am right now. Apparently, all I've got is monotone, but I started it. It's on record. I want I want royalties.